Hey, I'm Jake McNeal. I'm the creator of Crosswalk the game, and you're watching the first Devlog episode for my new and upcoming game, Crosswalk Joyride. The game is well underway at this point, but the player isn't capable of dying. So I created a short script that dealt with the collision between the player and any vehicle on screen. This can easily be modified later to add in other aspects such as trees, stairways, and walls. I don't have a game over menu at the moment, so the script simply takes away all speed from the player, stopping them in their tracks. I then decided to work on something a little different. I wanted to keep the player within the bounds of the road. At the moment, to keep the player from falling off the world, I had each building have a mesh collider component. This was an easy setup to quickly make a solid wall to keep out the player. However, there were a few problems with this method. Due to the collider perfectly matching the mesh of the model, it allowed the player to get stuck in windows, doors, and on top of the buildings behind like a wall. And so I decided to remove all of the mesh colliders from the buildings and instead construct a singular wall that would extend into the sky. Almost immediately, I began running into more problems. If the player were to jump into the wall and try and go to the right, they would be able to hover, allowing them to avoid all hazards. I tried to get rid of the friction between the two game objects, but it didn't seem to work. So instead, I added a short function to my player motor script, and this checked if the player began a collision with the wall, and if the player collided with the wall, it would get rid of any speed in that direction. This worked well, but I soon found a new issue that allowed the player to clip through the wall after every tile transition if they held right. Unfortunately, this was all the time I had to work on the game on Monday, so I saved and would continue to find a solution on Tuesday. Starting off, I wanted to fix the clipping glitch. After reviewing the script, I realized I forgot to include the on-collision stay method. After incorporating the method, the player was no longer able to clip through the walls. I then went ahead and added barriers to every tile prefab, making sure to leave an opening on every tile changing direction for the player to crash if they don't turn. I then went on to create box colliders for certain game objects in need, since the removal of the mesh colliders. Shifting mindsets, I began to work on a game over screen. Reusing assets from Crosswalk the game, I laid out how I wanted the screen to be. The game is intended to be played in portrait mode, so I scaled the UI by the width of the display, which worked splendidly with 16:9 to 19:9 aspect ratios. However, I ran into problems when I ran it in a 4:3 aspect ratio. It took half of the screen away. This will have to be fixed on Wednesday, so I closed up shop. I started the day thinking about if I wanted to incorporate a landscape orientation. I quickly decided that the game would be better if I forced it into portrait mode. With a wider view, you can easily see the edges of the tiles and how the tiles load into the world. This really isn't what I had envisioned for the game, so I decided to stick with only allowing portrait mode. I then shifted my attention back to the game over screen. After a bit of research, I decided to scale the UI not only by the width of the display, but also by the height. This made it work with a 4:3 aspect ratio, but it also took away from the 16:9 and 19:9 ratios. With this new scaling, the navigation buttons were too high up on the screen in regards to the 16:9 and 19:9 aspect ratios. To fix this, I created a horizontal grid layout and anchored it to the bottom of the screen. I also wanted a more precise score grid, so some refining was done and a hint of red was added behind it to make it pop. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep this, and it may be deleted in the future. I will still need to edit this UI to allow for a safe area required for newer iPhones and phones that have notches. But for now, this is good. I then began working on the settings menu. I had an idea of how I wanted to lay it out, so I started the positioning process. However, I ran out of time and will have to continue it on Thursday. I immediately started working where I left off. The settings menu was looking good, but it wasn't scaling properly. I changed a few settings to allow for it to scale half by the width and half by the height of the screen, and then proceeded to refine the images to avoid pixel distortion. Following that, I went to work on the credits menu. I wanted to incorporate all of my social media accounts for McNeal Games, but to do this, I would need to create some icons that would match the style of the game. I needed a 24 by 24 pixel image of the icon that would later be upscaled to a 72 by 72 pixel image. I started with Facebook, and then created Twitter, then Instagram, which was a little harder due to the gradient, but then I finished off with YouTube and placed them in the scene with the proper placement at the bottom of the window, regardless of the screen size. I then made a really simple credits text box. I make games by myself, but to keep it short and simple, I just put created by myself. I also added my wife into the special thanks because she is a wonderful individual and I am very lucky to have her and all of her support. Taking a look at the menu, I decided I hated the colors. So I changed the main text to black and the accent to a nice red. To keep things uniform, I went back and changed the settings menu accent color to the same red. I then made a quick function to handle closing the menus when the user presses the X in the top right corner. I then created a mock-up of a logo. It looks nice, but it probably will need some refinement. I then put it into the scene to see what a possible main menu could look like. I'm still unsure how I want the main menu to look, but that will be part of another video. I just want to thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. If you would like to play Crosswalk the game, there will be a download link in the description of this video. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Anyways, thanks for watching.